So today, we're going to talk about something huge. This idea that our thoughts can actually shape our health. And what's wild is that it didn't come from some fancy lab or a university study. Nope, it all started with the personal crisis of a 19th century clockmaker. So let's dive into the story of the man who healed himself and the world with just an idea.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if all those things, the aches, the pains, the illnesses we fight, what if they aren't actually physical invaders, but just mistaken beliefs that have kind of taken root in our minds?
That is a wild thought, right? Even today. But almost 200 years ago, one man who had been completely given up on by his doctors was pretty much forced to ask himself that very question. And his journey to figure it all out? Well, that would end up creating the blueprint for what's now a billion-dollar industry.
Okay, so to really get just how revolutionary this was, you got to picture the world he was living in. The mid-1800s was this age of intense scientific materialism. Everything, and I mean everything, was seen through a lens of nuts and bolts, gears and levers.
In this slide, this really paints the picture, doesn't it? The body was just seen as a machine. If it broke down, it was because a physical part failed or some external enemy, some entity, had attacked it. And your mind? Your spirit? Piffed. That was stuff for philosophers and priests to worry about. It had nothing to do with your liver or your lungs. And the treatments? They were just brutal. We're talking about things like calomel, a mercury compound that would often just poison people.
And right into the middle of all this steps our guy. And he's not a doctor, he's not some lofty philosopher. He's a man who was about to challenge pretty much everything they thought they knew.
So let's meet him. Phineas Parkhurst Quimby. He was a clockmaker from Maine, an inventor with this incredibly practical, perceptive mind. Now here's the thing. He wasn't some book-smart, university-educated guy. In fact, he actually distrusted books, because to him, they were just full of unproven opinions. His whole philosophy was, if I can't test it and prove it for myself, then it's just someone else's idea. This mindset made him the perfect outsider to see what everyone else was missing.
But you know, this whole thing didn't start because he was just curious. Nope, it started out of pure desperation. In his mid-30s, the machinery of his own body started to break down, and it was getting bad.
And listen to his own words here. You can just feel the despair. He was diagnosed with consumption, what we'd now call tuberculosis. He was told his kidneys were diseased, his lungs were practically gone, and he believed every word of it because how could you not? The doctors were the experts. And to make it worse, he was literally being poisoned by the so-called cures meant to save him. What a nightmare.
So he's basically given up on by his doctors. He's got no hope left. He starts taking these carriage rides, and one day, his horse just stops at the bottom of a hill and refuses to budge. Quimby, as weak as he is, has to get out and run alongside the horse almost all the way to the top. But when he gets back in, something incredible happens. The excitement, the exertion, it completely took over, and as he drove home, he says he felt as strong as ever I did. And boom, that's the moment. Think about it. How can a guy who's supposed to be wasting away suddenly feel like he could take on the world?
That one little moment of doubt sent him down this rabbit hole investigating a brand new field called mesmerism or hypnotism, and what he finds is going to turn everything on its head.
Okay, so let's follow his logic here. First, he starts experimenting with this young man, Lucius Berkmar, who's really susceptible to hypnosis. Quimby would have Lucius try to diagnose sick people, but he starts noticing this weird pattern. Lucius's diagnosis was always exactly what the sick person or someone else in the room already believed was wrong with them. And it hit him. Lucius wasn't some kind of human X-ray machine seeing disease. He was just a mind reader. And that led to the big question. If the disease was just a reflection of belief, then what was the disease itself?
And this right here, this was a complete 180. So you have the standard view, disease is this external monster that attacks you from the outside. But Quimby's new science, whoa. He says disease is just a bad idea, an error that you've let into your mind. The world thought the body makes the mind sick. Quimby realized the mind was making the body sick. And that meant healing wasn't about drugs, but about correcting the error in your mind with the truth.
And you better believe he tested this theory on the most important patient he had, himself. He had Lucius examine him, and Lucius described his kidneys exactly as Quimby feared. But then, Lucius said something so completely ridiculous about how he could fix it that the absurdity of it all just shattered Quimby's belief in the whole diagnosis. And once that belief was gone, poof, so were the symptoms.
So now he's cured. He's armed with this radical new idea he calls his science of life and happiness. And his personal breakthrough is about to start a movement.
He sets up shop in Portland, Maine, and his whole method starts to change. He ditches the whole mesmerism thing. He realizes he doesn't need a hypnotized assistant. He could heal people just by sitting with them, figuring out the error in their thinking, and then just explaining the truth to them. His whole mantra became, "The explanation is the cure."
And it's in Portland that he starts to attract this inner circle, right? Patients who'd go on to be super important in spreading his work. You had Julius Dresser, who would basically become the historian of the movement. There was Warren Felt Evans, a minister who wrote the first books on the whole philosophy. And then there was this one particularly desperate patient, Mary Baker Patterson.
Okay, so let's focus on one of these patients, Mary Baker Patterson. You might know her better as Mary Baker Eddy. By all accounts, she was at death's door. She'd been sick for years, and in her own words, the belief that she could ever get better, it was gone. Dead.
And what happened next was, well, it was nothing short of miraculous. Just 3 weeks after meeting Quimby, she published this in the local paper. I mean, listen to that language. Rolls away the stone from the sepulchre of error, and health is the resurrection. She's not just talking about feeling better. For her, this was a spiritual awakening, a resurrection.
Now, Quimby himself passed away in 1866, but this idea, it was way too powerful to die with him. The seeds he planted grew into this huge forest of new ways of thinking that are absolutely still with us today. You can literally draw a straight line from Quimby to today. His science of life and happiness gets picked up and systematized by his former patients, like Warren Felt Evans with his mental science, and Mary Baker Eddy, who founded Christian Science. And all these different streams, they kind of merged into this bigger river called the New Thought movement, championing positive thinking. And today, that core idea is absolutely everywhere, from self-help books to wellness gurus to things like the law of attraction.
So, when you boil it all down, it's just an incredible story. This massive, world-changing idea that what we believe, we can become. It didn't start with a team of PhDs. It all started with a humble clockmaker from Maine who just wanted to figure out why he was so sick.
And that kind of leaves us with one last, really big question to chew on. If our beliefs really do have the power to make us sick, then what kind of incredible power do they hold to make us well? Something to really think about, isn't it?